Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or your own story in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss our latest stories. And before I begin, tell me where you are watching from, because I always love knowing which cities and towns are quietly sharing these moments with me. And as I say that, I'm taken back to a morning that has lived with me for years, a morning that began with the familiar ticking of the old kitchen clock, the same one that has hung on my wall for decades. Its soft, steady rhythm filling the room while the sun was still shy behind the curtains, brushing them with a pale glow that made everything feel tender and fragile. And I remember sitting at the table with a warm cup of tea wrapped between my palms, breathing in the steam, trying to soothe the heaviness that had settled in my chest over the past weeks. A weight I hadn't fully named even to myself, when I heard quiet footsteps approaching, slow and hesitant, and before I even turned around, I knew it was Daniel, my grandson, moving the way he always had when something was weighing on him. Taller now, broader in the shoulders, yet still carrying traces of the little boy who once tugged at my sleeve for one more story. And when he said my name softly, with a tone that carried more than sleepiness, I knew this wasn't a casual visit or a simple morning chat, so I invited him to sit, watching as he lowered himself into the chair across from me, like he wasn't sure he deserved the space, his hands clasped tightly together, his gaze fixed on the steam rising from my cup, and I let the silence stretch because V learned over the years that silence can be a kindness when someone is gathering courage. And when he finally spoke about how much he'd been thinking about life, about me, about everything he'd been carrying, I felt my throat tighten, not from fear, but from the tenderness of realizing how deeply he trusted me. And as he talked, his words came slowly, at first careful and honest, revealing thoughts he had kept folded away for far too long. And I listened without interrupting, fully present, feeling the room grow smaller, more intimate, as though the world beyond the kitchen walls had faded. And in that space, I realized this conversation was not just about what he was feeling, but about the quiet bond we had built over years of shared meals, late-night talks, scraped knees, and unspoken understanding. And when he finished, the house felt impossibly quiet. The hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock suddenly loud, and he looked at me with eyes that were steady yet fragile, waiting not for answers, but for acceptance. So I spoke gently, telling him that feeling deeply was a strength, not a flaw. And I watched his shoulders ease just a little, the tension loosening as if my words had given him permission to breathe. And when he admitted how afraid he'd been of changing something between us, of ruining what we had, my heart twisted at the thought that he'd carried that fear alone. So I reassured him, not with grand gestures, but with steady truth, letting him know that honesty born from trust could never be a disappointment, and the relief that crossed his face was quiet but profound, the kind you only see when someone finally feels safe. And as the morning light grew brighter, painting his features in soft clarity, We sat in a silence that felt full rather than empty, a silence that held understanding instead of uncertainty. And eventually he spoke again, reminiscing about afternoons spent at my table doing homework while I cooked, about how this kitchen had always felt like home, and hearing that filled me with a gentle ache, reminding me how our presence lingers in the lives of those we love in ways we rarely realize it. And when he said he wasn't sure he'd feel safe after telling me everything, but somehow felt even safer now, something settled deeply inside me, a quiet confirmation of the bond we shared. And as the day unfolded slowly, he stayed close, helping with small chores, lingering nearby not because he needed guidance, but because he wanted connection. And later, as afternoon light softened the kitchen once more, he admitted he'd almost stayed home that morning, choosing instead to follow a feeling that told him I would understand. And those words stayed with me, reminding me how powerful it is simply to be someone others can turn to. And when he said he felt lighter, like he could breathe better now, I saw not just my grandson, but a young man learning to understand himself, choosing honesty over silence. And I told him that confusion is part of growth, that what matters is being truthful with yourself and with those you trust. And when he said I was the person he trusted most, gratitude filled me in a way I can hardly describe, because it wasn't about pride, but it was about purpose, about knowing that the quiet moments, the patience, the listening had mattered. And as the afternoon faded into evening, our conversation drifted gently between memories and hopes, without tension or fear, just warmth and clarity. And when he finally stood to leave, pausing at the doorway to thank me, the house felt quiet again after he was gone, but not empty, because his words lingered in the walls, in the chair he'd sat in the fading light, and most of all inside me. And standing there alone, I realized that what had happened at that kitchen table wasn't just a confession or a conversation. It was a moment of shared humanity, a reminder that being seen and trusted can awaken parts of the heart you thought had grown quiet, and that sometimes the simplest mornings, marked only by ticking clocks and cups of tea, are the ones that echo with us for the rest of our lives.